This is a quick tutorial of how to insert a beam in SeismoBuild and SeismoStruct's building modeler. First, we will go and insert the beam elements by clicking on the Insert Beam button. Pressing the button will cause the opening of a window with details on the member section at the right side of the main window. For each type of section, the section and member characteristics are organized in drop-down menus, including geometry, materials, loading, reinforcement, jacket, and advanced modeling. By selecting the Geometry tab, we can select the beam section dimensions from a list of predefined dimensions corresponding to a rectangular shape. And of course, we can always modify the dimensions by clicking on the corresponding dimension label, and then inserting the value that we want. Also, if the beam is inclined, we select the Inclined button and define the difference by entering the corresponding values. We continue with the materials. Also, we can specify the beam material set from the Material Set module. If we scroll down, we can see the Loading menu, where we can specify additional permanent load distributed on the beam. Afterwards, we select the Reinforcement tab. Further below, in the Longitudinal Reinforcement module for beams, we can define the number and diameter of reinforcing bars for the upper part, the lower part, and the sides of the rectangular beam. It is also possible to define the reinforcing bars for 3 different sections of the beam: the start section, the middle section, and the end section. Similarly, we can modify the beam transverse reinforcement. We can define the hoop's diameter for the start, middle, and end sections. Then, we will define the jacket type. Following, if we go to the Advanced Modeling menu, we can find the Advanced Member Properties button, where we can specify the more advanced parameters for our beam. And finally, at the end of the Section Properties window, we can open the Modeling Parameters module. We will now return to the View and Modify Geometry tab. We should notice that there are 3 parallel lines along the beam length on the beam section drawing. We must choose one of them as the insertion line along which the beam will be inserted in the floor plan. In our case, the top line is chosen, and for this reason, it is highlighted in black color. Here, we will choose the bottom insertion line. Then, since we want to insert a beam horizontal in plan, we will activate the Ortho option. The Ortho option allows us to introduce members only parallel to the horizontal and vertical plan directions. By horizontal and vertical, we mean the X and Y axes of the plan. We will then start inserting the beam by clicking on column C1. Keeping in mind that we chose the lower insertion line for the beam. We will then click on column C3 in order to introduce a beam between columns C1, C2, and C3. Please notice that, when we insert a beam intersecting with several columns, as in our case, the program automatically introduces a separate beam between every 2 columns. In this case, beam 1 was introduced between columns C1 and C2. And beam 2 was introduced between columns C2 and C3. Finally, we can make check for the correct assignment of the beam by selecting the View Story 3D Model button.